My name is Janet Ahrberg, and we're conducting an interview for the O State Stories and Oral History Project of the OSU Library. And today we are interviewing Harold Field, an OSU graduate with a BS in Electrical Engineering, and he graduated in 1950 with that BS, and an MS in Electrical Engineering in 1952. So welcome, Mr. Field. We're glad to have you here today. And also accompanying him is his daughter, Sally. We're glad to have her. She's an OSU graduate, too. Okay. Can you tell us when you attended OAMC, the years that you attended?
I enrolled in first semester of the 46-47 year, and then graduated in spring of 1950.
Okay. And how did you choose OSU? OAMC? That's going to be hard for me to do.
Well, I was in the service during World War II, and as a radar technician. And MIT was the leading school in electronics in those days. And so I decided I want to go to MIT. After coming home, I found out that I really couldn't afford MIT. So I wanted to go to one of the land-grant colleges. And surprisingly, the MIT is also a land-grant college. And they decided that the place to go was Oklahoma A&M.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit, were you around when homecoming, did they have a homecoming tradition back then? Or did they host homecoming back then?
Yes.
Okay. Did you attend any of the ceremonies or participate?
Since graduating or before?
Before, while you were in school?
Yes, there was always something. That was a big day, and a fun day for everybody.
Did they have a parade?
Yes.
Okay.
And most of the schools had some sort of display or something, and I worked in the engineering displays several times to get things ready for homecoming.
Did we play a certain school, or did they rotate it like they do now?
I think every school had something for the people coming back for homecoming.
Okay. What other traditions do you remember from your time as a student here?
Well, those were peculiar years. When most of the veterans showed up the first day on the campus, there were a group of sophomores, juniors, and seniors that were going to welcome all of the new freshmen on board. And they were looking forward to that, and they found the new freshmen to be a completely different breed of student. And they very quickly found out that they were the pledges. That kind of put a damper on the activities for those years. It was not the same kind of school that it had been in the previous years. Students were a lot more serious, and most everyone had been off somewhere fighting the war and came home, and that was not their style.
Okay.
So I'm sure the students that attended the school prior to 1946 that were still in school were very disappointed that they had to go through all of this as a freshman, and then they didn't get to play their role in later years.
Do you remember some of the things they used to do to the freshmen?
Well, I remember that when we enrolled, they set up tables in the Gallagher Hall, and you go and find a table, and according to what school you were enrolling in and so forth. And the line of people waiting to get in to register was about 4 blocks long down my block.
Oh my.
And they students, upperclassmen, came by trying to get somebody to wear a beanie or they were going to paddle people that didn't do this and that and the other. And that lasted about 20 minutes and it was all over. Everybody stayed in line and went in and registered and didn't worry about the festivities of the school.
Okay. Any other traditions that you remember? Other that you're talking about the beanie that they used to wear?
Oh, they had encouraged people into the Peps clubs and that sort of thing. They were apparently a large part of things in 46 or the 45 prior to 1946. And the school enjoyed a lot of success in football particularly. And the pep clubs were big and strong. And then in 46, none of the incoming freshmen wanted any part of any of it. And so it died. And I don't remember the names of some of there were several pep clubs.
Okay.
And I don't remember the names of them.
Now where were some of the popular gathering places on campus that the students used to hang out? Do you
Well,
recall?
the corner across from the fire station was the #1 corner. And there were 2 or 3 spots around there. And in those days, any place that had a jukebox had a place to dance also. And so those were very popular spots. And then I don't recall the name of the intersection that, what is the name of the street where there's upstairs dance hall and a beer?
Oh, in the old Fox? Yeah.
Elm Street, on
but-
Elm Street?
But there was no beer in those days. In most of those places, there was one bar over there that was served 3.2 beer.
Across from the Sheraton.
Oh, okay.
You know where the old Fox was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But those were the popular places out on Highway 51 east of town. There's a popular dance hall out there.
Was it what was the dating like? Did you have to call a girl in advance? Did girls call the guys back then? What was kind of the guidelines for dating back then?
Well, not a lot different than they are today, I suppose. Dating on the campus was not normal, I'm sure, at least during 46 and 47, because there were 4 male students to every female student. And there were most of the dorms and a good many of the sorority houses would have parties and dances and invite people in. But it was an awkward situation.
Did they have curfews?
Not that I knew about.
Well, where did you live while you were here at OAMC?
Well, the first place I lived was a place way out on Washington, almost to Highway 64. And I only stayed there for 3 or 4 weeks. And then I moved into a tent complex that they had out west of the campus and lived in a tent for a year and a half. And then moved to Cordell Hall.
Was there a student union here or a Theta Pond? Did they have those places?
Well, the Theta Pond has been here forever.
Okay.
Student union was construction, I believe, was started in 47. And up until that time, there was really no place for the students to gather. They used the gymnasium. There was a building that I don't know whether it's still here or not, that was over next door to the old gym, I believe, that was used as a place for people to gather.
Okay. Did you have a car?
Yes, I had the car.
So you're pretty popular then, huh?
Well, I had a 37 Buick, and everybody was always wanting to borrow it. And I guess maybe one student in 10 had a car. And so I broke the key off in the lock and left it on the parking lot, and everybody drove. I should have kept a logbook on that car. There were probably 10 or 12 honeymoons that it was used for. If I wanted to use the car, I'd have to leave a note on the steering wheel, and it would always be there if I left a note. It was amazing that people treated the car as well as they did, and they'd take good care of it. And if it needed some gas, somebody put some gas in it.
Do you remember what the price of gas was back then?
Well, in Stillwater it was high. It was 12 cents a gallon, and in Tulsa it was 9 cents a gallon. So big price spread.
Did the students go home a lot, or did most of them stay on campus? Or
I'd say it was about 50-50. There were a good many students, and I would do this quite often, and go somewhere to work during the weekend. There's not enough jobs in Stillwater to keep everybody busy, so my roommate, Bob Kirby, that was supposed to be here, he held a job in Tulsa on weekends during all of his years in school, and would travel back and forth. And it was a carpooling deal. Somebody say, I'm going to Oklahoma City or Tulsa or somewhere. First thing I know, we'd have a car full.
What was the highway you traveled on, and was it paved?
Yes, it was Highway 51.
It was, okay.
But Highway 51, before Lake Keystone was built, was considerably different, because in that part that's now covered by the lake, there were a lot of streams and bridges, curvy highway. There was a lot of wrecks on the highway.
What do you remember about the library?
What I want to know about the library?
What do you remember about it? Did you use the library while you were here?
Yes, but there wasn't much of a library, and it was very crowded. And so you'd go to the library specifically to look up various things. And the general library, I really didn't use all that much, because we had an engineering library, and most of the things I wanted to know were there.
I was trying to think. Okay, you talked about some of the activities that you participated. It says in your information sheet that you were on the bowling team and the softball team.
These were not college-sponsored teams.
Oh, they weren't?
Both were just put together by some, I don't know who got the bowling team together, but it was going with replacing people now and then for 4 years.
Did you play other students here on campus, or?
Yes.
Okay. And where was the bowling alley at? Where'd you bowl at?
Let's see. It was down Washington here on east side of the street, before you get to, what's the main street, east and west?
You're talking about 6th Street.
Sixth, yes. Somewhere this side of Sixth Street.
Okay. And it also mentions that you had some membership in the IEEE and Sigma Tau and the Eta Kappa Nu. What were those? Were those?
The IEEE is the Electrical Engineering Society, and the Sigma Tau is the General Engineering Honorary Society, and Eta Kappa Nu is the Electrical Engineering Honorary Society.
And you also mentioned that you had some good hunting and fishing opportunities around here.
I spent most of my time going to school hunting and fishing.
Is that right?
Fishing was kind of strange in that I kept a trot line on Stillwater Creek and caught enough catfish to feed most of the veterans around. And while we were living in tents, we did our own cooking. And there was really not a good cafeteria for students that didn't live in some kind of student housing. So we did a lot of cooking.
And you said you did hunting. Did you do some? Did you go on a farmer's place to hunt, or was it?
In those times, no one really cared a whole lot if you went on a place to hunt. Now you better not go hunting without permission, but in those days we really didn't worry too much about it. No one cared. And so most of the vacant places around close to Stillwater, I used to walk out and hunt on the west edge of campus almost daily. And duck hunting, we used to pond hop, get in the car and drive up along behind the pond dams and go over the dam, shoot a few ducks.
But you didn't have a license, right? Or did you have a license?
Did
they require a license?
Yes.
They did. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I bought hunting and fishing license in Oklahoma forever, I guess.
There was one place you mentioned there was a Wendy Miller's bar. I haven't heard that.
That was over on my block, just about the middle of the block, from between the fire station and where this Fox place was.
You said outlaw car and motorcycle races were regular events. Where did they race at?
There were several farms that would let the kids come in and race on the farms. And they had motorcycle hill climbs and races and drag races for cars. Turned out to be one big dust storm at the end of the day.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
Did you enter yours?
Yeah.
Well, motorcycles were particularly important around there. It's cheap transportation, and there were a lot of surplus World War II surplus motorcycles. And in the tent city, there was always some kind of motorcycle contest out in the middle of it, and stirring up enough dust that you couldn't breathe for a week.
How many people lived in one tent?
Well, they were set up for 6, but most generally it would come down to about 4. We had 4 in our tent for a long time.
Were they heated and cooled, or were they?
They were heated and cooled according to what the temperature was. There was a heater in the center of it that we used to cook on top of also. And it's pretty fundamental. Not a lot of frills in that.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the student body? You said there was more men than women. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was there many minorities here at that time?
There were a few minorities, but nobody paid very much attention to them. They just blended in with everybody else, and nobody really thought of them as minorities. The minorities got to be popular after that for some reason.
When someone mentions OAMC and OSU, what crosses your mind first? So when you think of your time here, what's the first thing you think about when you think about?
Well, when you mention both of those names in the same sentence, the first thing I think of is a terrible mistake. I enrolled in the Cal College, and I intended to stay in the Cal College, and I don't like the idea that it changed to something else.
Well, that was my next question. At the time, there was a lot of discussion surrounding the name change, and here on campus when they changed it from OAMC to OSU. What do you remember about how the campus handled that change?
I was not here at that time.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
The name, as I recall, the name change officially took place in 1957. And my last courses were in 53, I guess. All of my graduate courses were taken off campus. That in itself is an interesting thing. Bob Kirby and we were roommates here. When we got in Tulsa, we wanted to do a master's degree. And so they waived the residency requirements. And we drove back and forth taking courses. And then there were 2 or 3 others that decided that they wanted to take some courses also. And it was not long before it became apparent that it made a lot more sense to get the professor to drive to Tulsa than to get a couple of carloads of people to drive to Stillwater. So we made arrangements to get some of the professors to come over to Tulsa. And that was the start of the OSU at Tulsa. And as I understand it, it's still not a separate campus. And that's the way we arranged it originally, and I'm amazed that it stayed that way over the years, that the Tulsa classes are really on Stillwater campus classes, and officially.
Where did you meet at?
We had a couple of research centers, and the old Stanlin Research Center, and Carter Hall Research Center, and the place that I had was the Geophysical Research Corporation. We had rooms and conference rooms that were available. And then for the larger classes, we conned the University of Tulsa into letting us use the classrooms. So we had a pretty good group of courses that were offered in Tulsa.
Well, your being here today is an indication of your fondness for the university. And can you tell me what is it about the university that generates such a connection, do you think?
Well, as a youngster, I really never thought I'd go to college. Never thought I'd be able to afford it. And the land-grant colleges are, one of the provisions in the land-grant laws that they be colleges for the working. Using that, I think it's that language exactly. They're colleges for the working people. And I've had this conversation with Sally a time or two that when you go to college, you have to make up your mind ahead of time whether you want to go learn something or whether you want to go learn how to do something. And the land grant colleges were originally thought up and organized to be places where you go learn how to do something. And they were all mechanical and agricultural colleges where you come out, you know how to do a specific thing. And, that is the thing that attracted me. And from an early age, and I still think it's the way things ought to be.
Do you have any other children, or how many of your children have gone to OSU?
Just one.
Just one.
But we have five children.
Mm-hmm.
And, they attended, I think, every school in the Southwest Conference and a few others around the country.
If you were to give advice to future or current students, what would it be?
Well, I have given advice a number of times, and my advice has been that before you choose a college, that you ought to decide what you want to do. And that's the most difficult thing, is to decide what kind of lifestyle you want, what type of work you want to do, and the impact of choosing a college is you're choosing, probably going to choose your mate for life and the part of the country you're going to live in. And I think it's a mistake for someone in Oklahoma to go off in the Northeast to go to college, because they're not going to live there. And all of their college contacts are generally lost. There's very formative years, the college years.
Okay. I want to back up here just a little bit and ask you about the sports here on OSU campus. What was the sporting events like, and which ones did you attend?
Well, I went to a lot of basketball games, wrestling matches, and football games. And the thing that I enjoyed about them more than anything else is that we could always argue that we had the best team in the nation. And there wasn't any bowl series or any big computerized determination of who's the best football team in the country. Before all that happened, every university or college the students could sit around and argue about who's got the best football team. They're trying to take the sport out of it.
Pause it for a minute. Let's go. Okay.
I listened to the game.
You listen to the
How much
In
was,
Hawaii.
how much was tuition back in those days?
What?
How much was tuition?
I think the general fee in '46 was $12, and I'm not sure of that, but I think that's right. And I think an in-state student would spend almost $100 if they took 20 hours.
And you had to live on campus? You said there was a residency requirement, so you had to, live in Stillwater, I guess.
Well, the residency requirements were for the graduate degrees, and that got to be a problem. Several of us were planning and had taken courses toward a doctorate, but they wouldn't waive the residency requirement for the doctorate, and if you didn't, so you had to come and live in Stillwater, and I couldn't afford that.
How did you pay for tuition, like for your freshman year? What, did your parents help, or did you have to work?
No, they, in 1943, right in the middle of the World War II, they started talking about a GI Bill of Rights, which would pay college expenses for overseas veterans. And when I heard that, I rushed to the recruiting office and said, I want to go now. And I went in a little before the regular age requirement and went overseas as quickly as I could. And I got enough time before the war ended to go through on a GI Bill of Rights.
Can you give us a little bit background about yourself? Where did you grow up at?
Sorry to laugh at that question, but when the war ended, I was on a battleship. And everybody says, let's go home. And I had lived on that battleship longer than I had lived any other place in my life. So we lived in, I was born in North Carolina, lived in Maryland and Virginia, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and I guess that was all. But my dad was a dry kiln engineer, designing dry kilns for lumber mills, and typically those jobs would last 4 or 5 months. So there were a couple of times that I went to school in the same school for a full year, but not more than a couple of years.
What was it like, the times that you grew up in, the family circumstances? Did not everyone, I guess as you said, going to college was, not everyone got to go?
Well, this was kind of a big deal in my family. Both my parents were born in Indian Territory, and they were in small communities where the highest grade taught in the school system was the 8th grade. And so they had little or no chance to go to college. My mother went to what is now Arkansas State, and but her father made her take the 8th grade twice because he didn't want her out of school. And then she went, when she was only 13 or 14 years old, and to I've forgotten what they called that then, but it's now Arkansas State. And got a teacher's certificate and started teaching when she was 17. And she was always disappointed that she didn't get to go to a full 4-year college. My dad started working early, and he lived to be 99 years old,
Wow.
almost made it to 100.
Wow.
And I don't remember a year in his life that he wasn't enrolled in college somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking a course when he died at the University of California, and living out there. And it was always a big deal as to when we'd travel around, well, he'd find some school and go to school.
Did any other of your family members go to OSU besides yourself? No. Okay. Can you kind of tell us, or maybe summarize, or in some way tell us what by attending OAMC, how did that impact your life, your career path, and possibly your support network?
Well, as I said earlier, I went to school to learn how to do something. And during the Navy years, I was electronics radar technician. And that led me to electrical engineering. And I wanted to become a well-trained electrical engineer. And my ambition was to be a research engineer. And I did, except they kept promoting me to a point where I was not using my engineering as much as I wanted to, and it was always a disappointment. But the fact that I went to school and learned how to do something, I think governed most of my life. The impact has been full impact, I think.
Including your hobbies.
Yeah.
You talked about Mr. Kirby, your roommate. How did you all become roommates? Can you talk a little bit about?
Well, we knew each other casually in our freshman year in physics lab. You had to choose a partner to do the lab work. And we ended up being partners in the physics lab and then practically every course during the 4 years we were in the same classes, and we've been partners in all kinds of projects ever since.
That's really neat. Well, is there a particular professor that sticks out in your mind that while you were here that was that you influenced you the most, or that you remember for some reason that had an impact on you, or someone that you'll just never forget?
There are several of them I'll never forget, but there are a couple of them that I guess Cyclone Jones is Jones was a professor in the electrical engineering department, and he did a lot of research in identifying tornadoes. And he was the first one to discover that there are spherics discharges within a tornado. And so he got a bunch of the students, and I was one of them, to work on various kinds of devices to detect and track a tornado. And he was a brilliant guy, but he had tunnel vision. The only thing he could see was a tornado. So we dubbed him Cyclone Jones. And we did a lot of work with him. Got Kirby involved later on after we moved to Tulsa, and built the first radar station over there to track tornadoes, and developed most of the language that is used now to identify the tornadoes and to get on the news stations and tell people what to do, and to get in the bathtub and open all the windows. So Jones had a big impact on things that I did. And that was hobby work after we got out of school, but we kept in touch with him and did a lot of this experimentation for him. He deserves a lot of credit because he, as far as tornado identification is concerned, he's the man.
Were there very many women professors? Maybe not so much, but like on campus.
Yeah, I took a course in golf in my last semester of my senior year, and my golf instructor was a woman.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your time at OSU? Anything memorable, something that you would like to tell us that we haven't covered?
Well, the main thing I believe would be of interest to people is how much different those years, particularly the 4 years, 46 to 50, have been at every school, not just Oklahoma A&M, but every school went through some of the same things, but Oklahoma A&M was a popular school for the veterans, and everything turned out to be different. One of the things that I think of every now and then is before I went into the service, I used to love to dance, enjoyed music, and as I said earlier, every place had a jukebox. And when I got back from the service, I didn't enjoy dancing anymore. And my music appreciation went to zero. And then it took me about 30 years to realize that had happened to millions of people. And it was particularly evident around the campus here in Stillwater. There were not many dances. Dancing was not popular with any of the veterans. And what had happened is that we all went off to war and we got hearing damage with all of the loud guns and training and just general loud, and there was no hearing protection in those days. And it develops intermodulation distortion where you hear a lot of harmonics of the music that you hear. Instead of getting one drum roll, you get three. and it's practically impossible for people with that degree of hearing damage to have any rhythm or keep up with the rhythm in anything. And Stillwater was a place where there were a lot of dance locations. And after the first year, then in the mid-50s, all of these people that were missing out on dancing and thought they would enjoy dancing, there were all sorts of dance academies sprung up all over the country to teach people how to dance. And everybody, I went to one of them, and they couldn't teach me anything. and none of the students that went to them ever learned how to dance because they couldn't. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah. That's one of the things that changed this campus and a good many other campuses without anyone ever knowing it. That changed the social life on the campus entirely.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
So what did you do for fun then? If you didn't dance, what did you do for fun?
Well, a lot of parlor games and
Cards.
more outdoor activities. Still had a lot of parties, but there were a lot of wallflowers. And all the girls would get mad at everybody, all the boys, because they wouldn't dance.
Okay. Well, I think that just about sums it up. Is there anything else you want to add about this that you would, like I said, anything else you'd like to add? Comment about your time here at Oklahoma A&M?
Pretty good 4 years I spent.
Good ride, huh?
Yep.
That's good. Well, we are so pleased that you've joined us today and brought Sally with us. And again, I want to thank you for coming and participating in our O State Stories.
Glad to do it.
We have we have one more story that Mr. Field would like to tell us. Go ahead, Mr. Field.
Well, I'm not sure how interesting it is, but I went into the Navy a little early, and I didn't finish high school. And most of the larger ships, they would bring study materials on board for people that would order them in. And I ordered in all of the material for high school course that they had so I could finish up high school when I was in the Navy. And I completed all that and ended up teaching a few of those courses to others on the ship. And so I thought I was in good shape. And I came over to Oklahoma A&M, and they got all enrolled, took all of the entrance exams, and they in those days they gave you an entrance exam, and it wasn't any pre-examination such as SATs and those things. And you had to take them on the day that you came over to enroll. And I took those, and I didn't have any problem with them. They went up to finalize my registration, and I had started early in the morning, and it was about 11 o'clock. And the testing was the day before. And the gal looked through all of my records and says, "Well, you don't have a high school degree." And I tried to explain to her that I did. And she says, "We've got to have a diploma from a Oklahoma high school." So I said, "Well, okay." And I got in the car and I drove to Central High School. And they were closed. The principal was there, a gentleman named D.E. Temple. And I went in and said, "I need a high school diploma." He says, "Well, what am I supposed to do about it?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to get one. And I've got to have it today, and I've got to go and take it back to Stillwater." And he was very amused at all that. I kept talking to him, and he says, "Well, we do have a provision that we can give testing, but the people that do the testing are not here today. I'm the only one here." And I said, "Well, do you have the test? I'll just take it right now." And it was one of the tests that you use a carbon pencil to check off things. So I rushed through the test and gave it back to him. And took me about an hour, I guess, to take the test. And he says, "Well, I don't have any way to grade this." Well, let's sit down and grade it. And he looked around and he found a template that would go over all his tests, and he graded the test and gave me a letter telling them that I was a high school graduate of Central High School in Tulsa. I got in a car and came back to Stillwater and finished my enrollment.
Oh, that is so cool. It must have been fate. Must have been fate. You were destined to come to OAMC. Okay. Well, thank you again for participating, and
Well, what do you call the school now?
Oklahoma State University.
Well, we used to call it the Cow College.
The Cow Call. I've never heard that. Have you heard that?
That was the universal name for the school. Was the Cow College.
Really?
And I was telling Sally on the way over that we were in Oshkosh, Wisconsin one time, sitting around the table with a bunch of engineers at a fly-in up there, and one of them had on an OSU hat. And I said, "Well, what's going on over at the Cow College now?" And he says, "We don't call that the Cow College anymore. He says, that's now moo you.
Well, I do have one last question. What was it like against? Was there still a big rivalry at that time against OU, University of Oklahoma, when you were here?
There was still the thing that everybody would run around full time and say beat OU, but we didn't call it OU. It was 0U.
I've not heard that. That's pretty good. So but there was a sense of bedlam back then, even.
Yes,
Okay. All right.
I'm sure that it was not as strong as it is today because of the different type of students during those years, but it was there.
So did you do anything before the games before you would play University of Oklahoma to get ready for them on campus to kind of fire everybody up? You talked about the pep teams and things.
Oh, we did a few things, but the big rivalry was at Oklahoma A&M was between the engineering students and the agricultural students. On engineering day, they'd come in and tear up everything we had, and on ag day, well, they got their dose of it then.
Well, was there a lot more agriculture students here then at that time, or
This was an A&M school.
I know, but which was it? But yeah, you were reminding me. What was but was there a balance? Did you have this? Was there more than the other? Do you think?
Difficult to say. That engineering was probably about 40% of it. I'd say that's a guess. It was tough to figure out what percentage the ag students were because they took a lot of things. Their interest was in agriculture, but that was not their major. I had several friends that were in accounting and finance, and they were really ag students, but that wasn't their major. And, so there were a lot of ag students.
Well, since you graduated and left OSU, you've mentioned Mr. Kirby as one of your good friends. Have you been able to stay in contact with some other OAMC graduates too?
I'm run over with them. I don't know why, but the people that I hunt and fish with, we didn't get together with any kind of college-related activities. But all of them are from OSU. They enjoy all of them most of the time.
That's great. That's great.
And then some of the ag students I've kept in touch with and know where they are. But it would have been real easy for me back in those years to switch from engineering to get to be something in the agricultural field.
Well, have you been able to come back to OSU much since you graduated? I mean, have you been, come back a lot, or
been to a few ball games? When we were in Tulsa, I would go to several games a year, but since we moved from there, a couple of 3 visits, not about it.
well, it's hard to get back, especially when you live where you're in Texas now, right?
Well, yes.
You're a bit further south. So anyway. Okay. Thank you very much.